We, oh, we're on. All right. Hello, Stephen.
Hello.
Hello, Zach.
Hola.
All right. So the other day we talked about treatment and nerve entrapments and all that, but today I wanted to talk about like on these ones we want to talk more about like sales and buying and marketing and things like that. So we want to talk about why there's two ways that people buy and what is the thing that they buy off of, Steve?
90% of the time, people buy off emotion.
Emotion, because what is
So
pain?
it's emotion that you
Yeah,
feel.
because
It's in there.
as humans, we're built to like seek pleasure and avoid pain. And when pain
Yeah.
is messing with you and it's affecting your quality of life, it can really cause some big problems. What is the question that we always ask at the end of our consultations that really sets people like they're like, "Holy shit, people have never asked me that." What is that question we ask?
We always ask if they're confident they're in the right place to get their pain fixed.
Yes, that is true. But what do we also do on the
Oh,
consultation to connect with them emotionally? What do we say?
I was talking about the consultation there as far as like if how is this pain affecting your life?
How is this pain affecting your quality of life? Because at the end of the day, for people to take money and time out of their day and they come in, it's got to be a burden. Like I always say, pain just fucks with you, especially if you've had it for a
Yeah.
long time too, because one of our qualifications is they've had to be dealing with it for what, 6 months?
Yep.
And
Chronic pain, 6 months.
failed with two other providers. So these are people that,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, emotionally they're going to have a response to that. So 95 to 98% of people, they're going to buy based off of emotions. And if you don't connect with them on that emotional level, you're going to get like some rebuttals and some no's on the back end. Because what happens, we're all do this, we're all guilty of this, especially people that are therapists, that we're more analytical. And
Yeah.
we look at it, we're like, yeah, your shit's fucked up. Like you got all this scar tissue and inflammation here. I'm going to fix it. But we look at that through that lens. And then when we don't connect with them emotionally, they don't sign up or they don't come in. And we're like, what do we do wrong? But we have to not look at it through our lens. We have to understand that people are very emotional and do that.
Yeah.
So once you get them to buy and commit based off of emotion, what do you have to do through the rest of the process?
Oh, with logic. They have to confirm it with logic to make sure that they know from the proper standpoint that they made the right decision.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what are people really worried about? They're worried that they're going to make a wrong decision and they're
Yeah.
worried they're going to get fucked over, screwed over, scammed, all that. And I don't blame them because we know what's out there. Stem cells, bullshit, crystal healers, all this stupid shit is out there. And they're like, oh, is this just another thing? And it's not. So you have to justify with logic that they continue to make a really good decision. So what we do differently with the peak method and the way we're trained is we connect with them emotionally, then we show them logically how we're going to be able to help them, and then we hit them again emotionally as we
Yeah, that's the benefit of having all the functional tests and the functional movements is they're not taking our word for it. They're actually getting to see their own personal progress along the way to verify that they made the right decision because it makes a big difference. Nobody wants to take your word for it.
Yeah, so then what happens is we get people to pay for their first 12 visits up front. That's part of our process. That's
Mhm.
why it works, because if you're trying to do one-off visits and all that, it just doesn't work. And that's a whole different rabbit hole we can go down later. But
Yeah.
once you get them to pay for those 12 visits, we've all made this mistake. And I made it early in my career, and other practitioners have, and you have as well. What did we do? Like, we kind of, once we got them to buy in the beginning, we kind of coasted a little bit because we're like,
Yeah.
okay, we got 12 visits to get this right. And then what happened on the back end when people were going to sign up for more care or go into maintenance? What happened?
Well, what happens is if you don't continue to show them, they're going to continue to get better, but because they feel this stuff every single day, they're going to lose the value in exactly how far they've come. They're going to forget where they started at, and therefore they're not going to value where they're at now as much. And those are the ones we drop off. Those are the ones where we forget to show them their actual data. We forget to show them where they used to be, more importantly. And the before and afters make a huge difference in just communicating, their overall wellness. And where we
Yeah.
drop the ball on that, they drop off the program. And most of them end up calling back 6 months to a year later to come back on because they're reminded that they were much better and they just didn't stick with the program.
Yeah. And then we always say, and we've been talking about that, is like when things don't go well as practitioners, we tend to want to like kick it out and be like, it's their fault. What do they do? But what have we been training? Like, first go in internally and be like, what did I do wrong? So
Yeah.
what have we created in our system that we try to do on every visit? What is that called?
You cut out there for a second. Say it again.
What is that? What did we create in our system that we do every visit that's really helped to mitigate that? What is that process?
That with the bookend coming in?
The win the room.
Yeah, winning the room. Yeah, coming in.
So with the win the room, there's a lot of things that we do, but we have to constantly remind them of what's wrong with them. Like people forget. We're like, how many times you have to say scar tissue inflammation? Like a bunch
Just
of times.
over and over, yeah.
And then the other thing that we have to continue to remind them of is what?
But how much better they're getting, how much they're improving, how better they are, how big the changes are.
Yes, and that simple phrase that goes a long way. Treatment is working.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, people want to be able to be like, yeah, it is working. I made a good decision. And what happens is we get tired because we see a bunch of people and we start the day off really good and we're like, all right, we're going to do win the room. But then by then you're like, fuck, I've said this 10 fucking times as we've gone through. But that person's only heard it for the first part. So that's the big difference where people struggle is they don't connect emotionally on the front end. They try to use logic and that doesn't work. But if you connect emotionally, you can get them to buy. But if they only stick around for 3 or 4 treatments, it's because you didn't show them logically that they're making that. And that's what we have perfected and tried to do over the years is like showing them real data, objective data. Like not like, hey, how do you feel? We show them pictures. We show them videos to actually show them objectively that they're getting better. And I don't think there's many other treatment systems out there that do that. They just,
no, and one thing to consider with that is, yes, we say scar tissue a lot. We say inflammation a lot. We remind them all the time they're getting better. And to anybody watching that, it can sound like we're going through the motions, but everything we're saying is accurate. It's all like morally intact. They are getting better. You got to remind them they are still have scar tissue is getting better. Their inflammation is reducing. They are making big changes. And so to somebody watching this video, they might say, oh, they're just saying these things over and over again. We're saying it because it's accurate, and you just have to remind people of what's going on. So I just wanted to clarify that because it can't sound repetitive, but again, it's all valid information that they need to have.
Yeah, and a big thing that we forget as practitioners is like, this is what we do all day long. We like dive into this shit all day long. These people are coming in for 15 or 30 minutes of their day, and then we might see them once or twice a week, and then they're out doing the rest of the stuff. And they forget all the time how far they came, what their problem was, and how much we've helped. And you just have to continue to remind them how well they're doing, because that's the difference between getting a client just for a little bit and keeping a client for life. Because we always say it's a hell of a lot easier to keep an existing client than go out and get a new one.
Yeah. And you can see when the process is working because we have, 50, 60 clients that have been around for a year or more, if, not significantly longer. And then we have those gaps of people who the balls dropped at the beginning and we never can recover. Again, they typically come back, but we got to start the process over again. And it's much easier. And in the long run, it's much more affordable to the client if we just keep them on long-term as, keep them healthy because they don't want to have to start over again because that's also frustrating. So it helps everybody in the long run. But if we do our due diligence up front and check off all the boxes, we can actually keep people healthier longer and save them money, which is a big deal for those people right now as well.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this next week, but kind of on the next one, I want to talk about the idea of like shifting the way they spend money. A lot of times with healthcare and injuries, that comes out like you have 2 things. You have like your budget and then you have like your project money. Your project money is like, hey, if your tires blow out or your air conditioner blows out or you need a new roof, that's your project money and you kind of save that up and use that. The problem is a lot of people use their budget money towards their treatment. And it's like, how do we figure out people to get them to use the project money to invest back in their healthcare? We'll talk about that next time we talk. So Dex, what's your thoughts so far?
I mean, it all makes sense. You got to tie in the psychology behind it. You got to remind people how they're getting better. And if you don't do that, they're going to forget because there's just a million other multivariate things going on in life. And it's difficult to tie them all back and
Yeah,
take your
what
healthcare seriously.
I read something. They said like 20 years ago, our attention span was like 20 minutes. Now we're down to like 7 seconds. So we have to think of like how distracted all these people are. And yes, pain is emotional, and it's not gonna be perfect when you're going in there and treating it. So like when someone has a flare up or it gets bad, they're usually gonna freak the fuck out and be like, treatment's not working. But if you can explain to them what's happening, why it's happening, and how you're fixing it, that's how you keep them along. But it goes back to the idea we talked about, like getting them to commit to those first 12 visits up front just helps with a lot of that too, because you know how it happens. You've been in traditional massage, and you have as well, Zach. Like people come in when it's really bad, and then they want a miracle, and then they wait till it gets really bad again, and then they're just in that never-ending loop.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of, you talk about winning the room, coming in, whenever they do come in with a flare up or something going on, the first time we ask them is, what did you do? Because if you can logically tie in an action they took that caused this problem, it suddenly clicks and makes sense. And again, we're just stating the facts up front, and we're bringing those truths to the surface so they understand. You know, if you have a really bad back and you flew across country for a business meeting overnight, there's a logical, reason for why your back is worse today than it was yesterday. But people don't think about that because these are the norms of society that we do each and every day, and we take them for granted until
Yeah.
you're in pain.
Yeah, good insight. And like I say this all the time, like clients come in and they go, here's the fire I started, you put it out. I'm not going to really do anything. And we always flip back and be like, no, I'm here to help. It's kind of like, we're going to get you up the mountain, but I'm sure as fuck not going to carry your ass up the mountain. I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in healthcare, and why people spend so much money on bullshit like stem cells and lasers and all this shit, because they don't have to do anything. They don't have to participate in the care. So they think, oh, it's going to be a miracle. And then when it doesn't work, and they know it doesn't work, they still sit there and tell themselves that it worked. They're like, well, I just spent $15,000 on stem cells. I'm like, well, how do you know it works? Well, I feel better. It's like, of course you feel better, because you want to sound like a fucking idiot, because you just wasted $15,000 on stuff. So that's
but then they go into a whole line of comparison syndrome. We're like, well, I've already spent this much money, I'm in pain. So they're even more skeptical to come to treatment that works, because we do have, as I said, we're kind of the last line of defense. We're the ones that fix people who can't be fixed. So most people come in, they've already wasted a bunch of money. So they're already in the mindset that they're going to continue to waste money, which goes back to the track of us showing them all the data as to why they haven't. It's even more important on our end, because we're at the end of all the other BS treatments out there that they've done.
Yeah,
So,
and like and you have to learn to like separate yourself emotionally from there. Like, well, I spent a lot of money. It's like in the back of my mind, like I don't say it out loud, but I'm like, well, that ain't my fucking problem. Like,
exactly.
that's not my problem that you did a bunch of shit that didn't work. Like, you're here now. Like, that's your stupid tax. Like, here you go. But we feel bad, and we're like, then we want to discount and we want to do all that. We won't go down that road, but it's like, you're here now and you justify it with the data. At the end of the day, people make decisions. They either say yes or they say no. And then you go from that and you show them logically that you can do that, and you connect with them emotionally. So good stuff. All right, guys, let me hit stop.